My name is Paul Nabil, and we have with us today an amazing arrangement of guests discussing winning the algorithm wars, resistance strategies for the social media front. We're just going to dive right in, I think, with everyone, and just go around the table real quick. And if you all could just share your name and your just a little bit about yourself, rapid fire style. I'm going to kind of call people out, but also at any time feel free to hop in at a reasonable moment. This is going to be a very casual, organic conversation and sharing of knowledge and strategy. So I usually kind of go around just however the thumbnails are arranged, starting with different people. So today we're going to start with Taysir. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Paul. Hi, everyone, and thank you to Tech for Palestine for organizing this incredible event. I hope so. I'm Taysir Matruthi. I'm the Senior EU Advocacy Officer at Hamle. Hamle is a Palestinian digital rights organization. We do monitoring, reporting of online censorship and online human rights violations against Palestinians and pro-Palestinians. And I specifically work at the EU level on advocacy, campaigning, and policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mona, why don't you go next?
Thank you, Paul, and thanks for Tech for Palestine for organizing this event. My name is Maria, and I am a tech policy practitioner and digital rights defender. So I've been working in content moderation rights for the past decade, campaigning, advocacy, research, and a lot of pieces here and there. Yeah, and glad to be here today. Excited for this. Thank you.
Excited to have you. I'm actually going to go slightly out of order because we have two people with this nod who I think should go next to each other. So next we're actually going to go Mo. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Yes, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Tech for Palestine, for having me. So I am Mu'ad Hamza, but I go by Mo Hams. That some of you may know me on social media, which was one of my first screen names that or usernames that no longer exists. One out of my 44. So now I'm on my 45th account. Which is probably why I'm here to discuss all that fun stuff. So Taysir, you actually probably have gotten many requests from me on Hamle, trying to get my accounts back. Yeah, so I'm Palestinian through and through. Palestinian. My father's side is from Ain Karim, my mother's side from Tubas, and I'm been fighting the good fight for quite some time now, and I'm vice president currently of Son of Freedom, which is an on-the-ground organization really helping all families in need. That is started by my good friend Anas Mushtaha, who's also on the ground in Gaza. But aside from that, I obviously I'm very involved in the activism online as much as humanly possible, wherever they allow me to speak, and that's kind of what I do. But yeah, that's all.
Perfect. Thank you. Next, we're going to go to Ezeldin, and after that, Hamnabil. Ezeldin, go ahead.
مرحبا, I'm Azzeddin Uidar. I'm Egyptian. I am the founder of ISNAD movement. ISNAD movement is a popular voluntary movement supporting Palestine. 3 years now. Thank you for having me now, and go on.
Shukran. Thank you. Hamnabil, why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Mohammed Nabil, and I am a tech lead at ISNAD movement. I have over 20 years of experience in IT in several aspects, starting from infrastructure, software development, cybersecurity, automation, and the list goes on. I joined ISNAD shortly after it was established in October 23, and I enjoy being there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that our producers are wondering if it's possible for you to turn on your camera. We can't see it right now. If you're not able to, that's also perfectly fine. I just need to...
Unfortunately, I don't have a camera.
Not a problem. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you. So this is going to be a really interesting conversation. We were just talking about it before in the waiting room. I think everybody here is such a cool kind of conglomeration of different aspects of this conversation about how, you know, navigating an algorithm in the current space. We have people with, like, you know, very strong kind of academic backgrounds, and, you know, or like policymakers in like the corporate space, and we have, you know, someone like Mo, who is very much more like a boots on the ground, getting hammered down by these kinds of practices, policies, censorship, those kinds of things. So I think it's a very valuable kind of collection of perspectives today. I kind of very first wanted to start with just like the name of the session in general, because there was a lot of discussion about, you know, it was almost meta, because, you know, you have to name the meeting something, and it's like, okay, well, what's going to grab attention, but what's, you know, the terminology you want to use. Everybody, of course, likes to talk about a war with this or a battle with this, but also, you know, everything is an algorithm. So are we really at war with an algorithm? You know, should we use vernacular like shadow banning? Should we like make everybody talk about, well, actually you're being suppressed and shadow ban? You know, like these kind of things. The terminology versus, you know, efficacy is kind of at the very like basis of this discussion. So you know, like just like defining terms, like what does it mean to you when you hear algorithm or an algorithm war or this or that or the other? Like how do you refer to these kinds of things, and how do we kind of balance efficacy versus, you know, the hook, I guess. Let's start with Taisir again, actually, because I think you were one of the people we engaged with when we were talking about naming the session.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. Obviously, I won't have the full answer of this question, but I can say what we do at Hamle and how we define these words. When we talk about an algorithm, we always talk about the technical aspect of it, while my daily work at Hamle and what we do is to prove that we're not only talking about something technical, something that is very complicated to understand. We talk a bit more about the policy aspect of the algorithm, who decides how to design it, who decides how to enforce it, what kind of rules do we want to include within this algorithm. So that's I would say our daily work at Hamle, and we're not here to say that all algorithms when it comes to content moderation are bad. We do say that the solutions exist, but we're quite against the solutions being put in place by those big tech companies who are building systems that are very opaque. We don't really understand how they work. We don't have access to their transparency reports. We don't understand how those technical systems decide the way they do. So we think that an algorithm that could be at least a bit more ethical would be a technical tool that shows all the decision making behind it. It's also, I mean, we also need to ask ourselves, do we want a technology that is only being built by the West, by Western companies, companies that also redo the gender imbalance of the technical experts, etc.? Or do we want also to create, build and design algorithms that are taking into account the communities, but also the environment, and the first thing, the transparency, as I would say, I mean the light that we should always follow when we talk about those systems. So it's not only about the technical aspect. I'm not a technical person. It's more around the policy aspect of it. How do we build rules around those systems, and who decides of how those systems will operate, basically? Thank you.
Amazing answer. So usually, I'm not sure if we have a hand raise feature. If we do, feel free to use it. You can also just visually just do this, and Hamid Nabil, if I notice your mic goes off, then I'll do my best to try and monitor that, or just to speak up and interrupt. We're all friends here.
I don't like to interrupt, just.
Not a problem. Does anybody else want to jump on that? I feel like Mo would be a logical person to go to next. Just kind of like, what's your perspective on that question?
Yeah, that's literally what I was going to get into. Is like from a user's perspective, algorithm to me means manipulation, control, in a sense. So you're manipulating the algorithm to, give others the dopamine fixes that they need, in a sense, but also manipulating the algorithm to silence the people that they don't want to hear. So that's the one thing that I personally have been experiencing as a user is, the algorithm is against me as big time, where I personally have tried to find the means to beat the algorithm, as we say, right? So there are a lot of techniques and tactics that we employ that a lot of us already know about. And who knows if I'm the right person to tell you if the tactics work, considering I've been banned 44 times, but they actually are working, and that's a good news here. Is my background, in which I didn't describe, is in marketing and advertising. I do understand the social space big time, so I also understand how algorithms work and how they manipulate it, how they control it, and that's something that can potentially be beat if you are tactful about it, right? So there's ways to engage people from the immediacy of your video, like how engaging your video is, or for my purposes, like I've done something from a text perspective, because like they control the algorithm through the actual captions of posts, as we know, and we have to write in symbols all the time to try to navigate that algorithm, is actually putting the text into the space and real estate of the post itself. I personally have done that, where I manipulate the text, make it different colors, different sizes, different ways, so that they can't latch on to specific words, which I think they're getting better and better with regard to actually using AI to find words, to find faces, to find voices, to shut them down in a way. But there are means to do it, and I've been doing it my whole entire tenure as a user, and to the point where like I'm garnering a following every single time, because they are working in terms of tactics to pull people in. But it's a matter of like, once they find out that you're back on the on the platform, that's when they take you down immediately with no rhyme or reason. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of manipulation, but a lot of corruption with regard to how they do it. So
I was just saying, I think you're the only person I know who, like, part of your brand is getting deleted and coming back. Like, at this point, it's like, oh, there he is, he's back. So it's almost part of following you now, is continually having to follow.
I'm here to torment Meta as much as humanly possible.
Mona or someone from Isnad, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, maybe I could jump in here. I do want to speak about the algorithms, but before, I do want us to zoom like out a little bit, because it's not only about the algorithms, because we're speaking about technology. We're speaking about technology, the design of this technology, how it's designed, for whom it's designed, and what's the purpose behind that, and is it safe or not safe? And I do like to trigger all those questions before speaking about algorithms, although algorithms are the nerve of those technologies, but there are too many steps before you reach to the algorithms on its own. Because if you look at any one of the social media platforms that we're using, and we're interacting with, they were designed and people interacted with that and people posted there before. Like since 2007, there were like too many features on Facebook, like way less feature on Facebook before we started speaking about manipulation. So I do think that we need to be mindful that not only about the algorithm, also how the policies are designed, how they change the policies, who they like, what are they addressing, and what they are, who left behind, and how all those questions are discussed and negotiated and addressed through the different policies, through the design of the features that rolled out for people. Are those features and products actually tested and balanced based on a human rights basis? And have like really risk assessment for the different features and for the different products before people start using. I highly doubt that. Being in this space for quite a long time, we've seen a lot of features, a lot of products that has been rolled out, and then people were impacted. Some of them are very basic, actually, products. So, if we want to speak about um things like how it's shaped, like how the information ecosystem, I would say, shaped, it's not only by algorithms, because there are also other decisions that have been made to what stays online and what goes from the platforms, so that before what we amplify and what we suppress. So I always would like like to be mindful of the factors before about the algorithm. And then I do think that the algorithms is a big portion of that, because they decide what to amplify, what to suppress, who to amplify, and who to suppress. And we've seen, like, for the past years, that much of the content that has been speaking about like progressive movements have been suppressed online. And this includes not only like Palestine, but also we can look at the feminist movements, at the different the different groups that have been advocating for different progressive causes and how their content, and then also what stays online and how the disinformation scene is affecting people online. And then look at the content, hateful content, and how that stays online. Not only stays, sometimes it's even flourishing online, where people love to interact with that kind of content, and maybe because it's also amplified and it's like flourishing there. So this sometimes how like the environment that we are dealing with. So yeah, that's the very thing that came to my mind when I was looking at the of this round.
That's extremely on brand, right? Because I mean, your tech policy it's at least a level or two up from just the concept of an algorithm. Because even the use of an algorithm to decide what you see and don't see, versus like we all forget, at one point Instagram was chronological. It just showed posts in order that they were posted by your friends, and then they made the express decision not only to switch that over to, like, by default, well, we decide what you see and where you see it, but also to completely remove the option to switch back to a chronological feed, which we used to have for a while. So those are all kind of that's not an algorithmic thing. That's literally, we're going to force you to use our algorithm and not give you the option to opt out of it. So that's a great call out. Absolutely amazing. Hamid Azuddin, and I don't want to. I'm going to try and stop grouping you two together. I know that you're both people, just because you're with the same organization doesn't mean we want to hear from both of you equally. And if I just keep doing that, just throw something at me. Azuddin, I think you meant it.
So I'll take it from here.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So
Sure.
I will. I just want to when I saw this the title of this meeting, it's not an algorithm wars. We are not at war. So I would like to say censorship algorithms, and this censorship, actually, it is not something new. It started in 1950s. And there was an automatic systems analog at that time to automatically listen to every phone call, and they just monitor for certain words like BOMB or any word that they start tapping those lines and see what's going on here. So this is not something new. When the new digital era, the internet and social media came up, it's the same mentality, but it's with different technologies. And the censorship itself is at different levels, starting from shadow ban up to, like Hamza knows, just taking out your account completely. So I think we at ISNAD, we have been working on this for a long time now. If we believe those 3 years is a long time. And there are several ways to get over this. The most important thing is those companies mainly they are after profit. We need not to forget that. They are after the bot farms, mainly. They are not after somebody saying, I like this country or I don't like this country. This is not their main goal. Their main goal is those millions of bots that is just roaming around, and they want to hunt them down because they just simply make them lose a lot of money. We at ISNAD developed certain technologies that I'm going to say counter those I'm going to say algorithms, and I think we have been successful for some extent. And some of these technologies were some certain applications on certain levels, and also the daily monitoring and the strategy that we put in ISNAD, and the internal, most important thing, in my opinion, is the internal education of all of the members. We have I don't know, thousands of members worldwide from 25 countries, different time zones, different ethnic backgrounds, different everything, and we just work seamlessly with each other on daily basis.
Sure.
Way. This is part of the culture, and I think we have to live with it, and we have to play with its rules, and we have to have backup plans, and we have to combat it in certain ways. I'll be happy to explain this down the road in our meeting if you'd like that.
Yeah, and I think that absolutely. Thank you. And I think that that's probably a pretty good transition into a next question, which would be a little bit more about, well, you know, what do we do about it? Because once we kind of understand the landscape, everybody's going to have kind of a different way that they work towards navigating this. It can be very adversarial, I think, and it can also be kind of these very broad strokes. And it's because we haven't heard from Ezeldine yet, I think I might direct the question at you specifically, and you kind of, from your description, it seems like you kind of focus very much on like narratives, like what narratives are people trying to tell, and what narrative do we use to try and have our own voices heard in these digital spaces, which a lot of people will think about in terms of resistance, in terms of like a way to like a digital resistance space where we're trying to push back against what most people probably call like the mainstream, or the, you know, the much more widely funded, as Mohammed Nabil said, the one where the Zionist narrative that's going to be has a lot more push and power behind it. So like a grassroots counter narrative that we use to kind of resist in these spaces.
For me, or
For you, if you want, if that's okay. Yeah.
yes, تمام. Thanks, Paul. يعني before I answer, my point of view about the algorithm, maybe it's simply political point of view. I'm not a technical person, so that my answer will be from the political point of view. I want to set one foundation. Maybe will be the rest of the rest of the conversation maybe can build on this foundation. To talk about algorithm, we have to place them in their civilizational context, because the algorithm cannot aren't just a simple code. They are deeply organically tied to the very existence of the state of Israel itself. At ISNAD, we start from one core conviction. The Zionist entity is a narrative project. The Zionist is a narrative project in the first. Before it is a military structure. The story comes first. So we deal with this story. We deal, the algorithm for us is dealing with this story, dealing with this, because the algorithm created for, from our point of view, created for protected this story. The Zionist military, the Zionist project, not just a military structure, the story come first. It was written before anything was built on the ground, and it was the story, this is this country, this military, this project, protected by story, sustained by story, and I think it's a survival. Does not rest on the tanks. Maybe it rests on the multiple layers of narrative. They have multiple layers of narrative, so that they create. I think they create the algorithm system to protect this multiple layered narrative. They have three main narratives. Zionist, the Zionist project, يعني. They have the first one, internal narrative they sold to the settlers themselves, telling them that Israel is the safe haven, the comfort, the free settlements, work, and maybe Jewish power. This is the first narrative. This is the first story for them. The second one, they telling the narrative aimed to the West, the world, telling them first that Israel is the only victim. Israel is anchored to the Holocaust, and the second one is this, only democracy. And the third narrative aimed to the Arabs and Palestinians, designed to push us, all Arabs and Palestinians, into the feeling of helplessness, into the belief that Israeli army simply cannot defeat it. They have three narratives, so that they, in our opinion, create the algorithm to protect these three narratives, so that when we talk about the algorithm, I think we should talk about politics. It's a politic issue where they just it.
And that's amazing. So you're saying the algorithm is a representation of like the narrative they want to push. The three main narratives are Jewish power, ironically enough, self-victimization. The first one is what?
Yes. The first one for the settlements, the haven, Israel is a haven, the safe, and the second one for the world.
And the second one is basically like the self-victimization, like we're the victims here. And then the third one is
for the Arabs and the Palestinians.
And Arabs are helpless.
Resistance is
monsters. That's a really good distillation, I think. That's very.
It's about the resistance. The resistance is helplessness.
I think that's amazing. And does anybody who wants to respond to that, feel free. Mo, go ahead.
Yeah. So in a sense, like I like to say, resilience is resistance for us in a way. And just to speak for myself, like in my continuing to keep coming back, by the way, that's like my form of resisting them on their platforms. It's not just to mess with them. It's not just to, continue to lose followers and gain them back. It's really truly to be resisting the Zionist controlled powers that are controlling these applications, as Ildeen highlighted. And it's important for us to you realize, like I know Muhammad said, this is not a war. To me, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree. It is a digital war that we're fighting here. And the reason why I say it is the Zionist entity themselves go onto platforms and podiums and news stations to specifically say this is our digital war, because we have to reclaim the narrative that, in my mind, we have won that narrative by a long shot. Like there's no turning back with what we have been witnessing and what we have been working really hard to, push in terms of our narrative and the reality and the truth. So their war is a losing war, as I like to say, but at the same time, we need to keep fighting because it is a war in a sense, where I love to call it a war because we are now at equal level in terms of what resources and tools we have to fight back. Unlike in real time, when they call the Gaza war a war, that is not a war. And that's kind of like why I like to think of it that way, because in a sense, in the digital world, we have just enough, if not more ammo than they do when it comes to fighting this war and beating them. Which is why I always say the social media side of things is one of the greatest and biggest movements to ever exist in what we have been witnessing as Palestinians and the opening of the eyes of the world. Social media was the reason, and we used their Zionist platforms against themselves to do that, by the way. So, which is why I personally don't say leave. I don't say leave those, Zionist controlled platforms, because truly we are pushing the content as much as humanly possible as a movement against them. And when I say movement, it's important for us to understand that, like as any movement has, there's a lot of disjointedness in movements, and the Palestine movement is not immune to that, as we all know now. So there needs to be a unified message that we all come together to really push together. And that's the resilience and resistance side of things, is when people like myself or anybody that loses a voice on digital social media, to strategize outside of the social media realm, right? So form your networks outside of social media, so that if you truly have a message that we need to unify behind, talk to all the people that have their voices, currently out in the social sphere. And whether it be sending a video of mine to them to mass post as a group, or a message, a certain message to them to all combine and unify together. Because the reality is they can manipulate the algorithm all they want. They can delete, one person here and there all they want. But our movement is so massive and so global that if we have a unified message flooding their platforms, it's impossible to, curb that on a mass scale. So that's why I push for, a unified message, unified, voices in a way to push that message, and use each other in this movement to fight this war, that, ultimately we will win in the long run. And the other side of things is, I have to plug my favorite social media app, Upscrolled. So I have to plug it because it's that is a form of resistance in itself, right? It was birthed out of people like I saw, seeing the silencing, the censoring of people like myself and so many others and journalists on the ground in Gaza, to the point where the sickening part is posthumously even they are killing journalists and then shutting down their accounts post death. That's how gross it has become, right? So I saw him got so angry because of this, created his own Palestinian created social media app, which gave me personally a home to be and feel free to be myself and speak my truths without the fear of being shadow banned and deleted off the digital sphere. So that is a beautiful form of resistance and digital resistance that I think gives us an option to really fight the good fight on that side. And it is our duty to not turn Upscrolled into an echo chamber of just us talking to each other. This needs to become a platform that really rivals all the big tech legacy media, social media platforms. This is important for us to fight digitally in that way and support applications and platforms like Upscrolled, so that we can really truly fight the good fight in this sphere. Because they're going to continue to silence us. They're going to continue to shut us down on their platforms. We now have a platform that will not do that. So why not bolster that platform and make it bigger than the rest? So
I think that's a great point. First of all, Upscrolled supported by Tech for Palestine. Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to highlight one important point here. I also joined Upscrolled when it was released, but to be honest, I'm not happy that Upscrolled is there. because Upscrolled is a very nice, peaceful place that we just keep talking and echoing each other. We should not be in Upscrolled. We should be on Twitter and Facebook, on the other, where all of the rest of the people are there. Yes, we can vent out in Upscrolled. Nobody's gonna shut down our account, but this is how far it will go. I For the other thing, for the message, I just want to highlight what Mr. Aiz mentioned, that it is not a unified message. So there are messages for the inside of the entity. There is a message for the rest of the civilized world, and there is a message for uh, those who were seeing the entity in a nice suit. One of the uh, powerful weapons um, and that they call it the Haspara. It's like propaganda. This is one of the strongest weapons. Can shape the politics, shape public opinions, and by shaping this, you get what you want. I just want to highlight the importance of the narrative, which is, as a matter of fact, is, in my opinion, is the core of this conflict. The U.S. withdrew from Vietnam because the narrative changed. The narrative is everything. The story is everything. Continuous, as Mr. Hamza said, continuous exposure to them is very important, and we need to push those stories. But push it to whom? So we need to identify our target audience. So if we are talking to the inside, we need to talk Hebrew simply, and we need to expose, because they have their own internal Haspara media that no one can break. You break it, you go to jail, period. You expose certain events, you go to jail, period. It's very strict. It's very I'm gonna say dictatorship. Like it's just something you don't talk about this subject. You don't talk about this subject. Big explosion, people died there. You don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. So it's our job is to expose this to the interior, to know that their government lies to them and it is using them and it is pushing them to the edge. Their government cares about being in power. It doesn't care about anything else, period. There is also a narrative that is very important, and we target this in a sense called the Project 308. And we target the Arabic audience because, unfortunately, the 400 million Arabs surrounding Palestine, some of them started to believe that two-state solution is something that can happen. Maybe this is not our problem for the time being. Nothing is gonna, the fire is away from my home. It's never gonna touch me. There are a lot of also narrative that has been pushed, and we all know that the entity has a specialized unit called the Unit 8200 that is just specialized 24/7 in pushing this narrative for those who are surrounding them. It is not targeting anything else. It is not targeting the West. It's not targeting. It's just targeting those people. And this is very important narrative that we need to highlight and educate people about what's going on. The third important narrative, which is, I think this is natively done, which is exposure of what's happening and through the courageous reporters. I haven't seen something like that. And the least we can do is to transfer what they captured. They captured literally with their blood. And we need to just spread it and let everybody knows they don't allow reporters inside, and this is what's happening inside. And this is important because all of the narrative, like the only democracy in the Middle East, the only civilization, and if you are they tweak the narrative the way that you want. So if you're a socialist, for example, I'm going to show you how the settlements are an example of being a socialist, and it's self-dependent, and they just keep tweaking. The most important thing, keep pushing the positive narrative.
Yeah.
So I think we need to identify, um, because this is also the message itself is going to change back to the algorithms. The message itself is going to change when we know what to say to whom and how. Thank you.
Sure. Excellent. Absolutely. Mona, I think you had a thought, and then I know Mo, you had one. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if Taser, if you raised your hand or just adjusted your glasses. So if, but Mona, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I do want to get us back to the very first topic, which is the technology, algorithms, and all of that. What we are saying is the implications of where we are. Like the narrative is part of a bigger picture. So when we speak about like technology and when we speak about our narrative, like what is our narrative? Because that was part of my dissertation for my master's project, which is what is our narrative. And I was curious to understand what is like the pro-Palestine narrative. And when you look into that, and if you really look into what do we post? Unfortunately, our strategy is a very reactionary strategy. We look into things and we post documentation of what's going on. We post a documentation of human rights violations, of abuses, of news, like in news, day-to-day news. It's not a comprehensive narrative that enrich the reader quotes, that teach people exactly what do we want. That was back in 2021 when I've done this research. I think now there are some interesting like projects and organizations who are working on the narrative, and we can see like different kind of formulation for the narratives. But also, if we want to do that in the tech industry scene, we need to understand the ecosystem. And if we want to look at the ecosystem, we as Palestinians do not have the infrastructure. We don't have the technological self-determination, what we want to have and what we don't want to have. And we're still relying on the big tech, the global industry for the technology to share our narrative. And that's why when we look at that, yeah, our narrative could, as like, again, I always love to have that in a very intersectional. I don't want to look at Palestinians alone. I do want to throw all those parallels with other people around the world. Because also, if you look at the Uyghur, if you look at Myanmar, if you look at Western Sahara, if you look at Latin America, there are a lot of also causes and places where people are also struggling. Over the past few years, I used to work on not only on Palestine, I used to work on something a little bit bigger, so was focusing on conflict areas, but also was focusing on elections. And I've noticed that, and it's actually well documented, there's a lot of articles, how big tech a lot of money in protecting information integrity during electoral processes in the US, in Europe, and in places where there are actually safeguards, where there are actually regulatory frameworks that will hold them accountable. And when I say hold them accountable, I'm speaking about holding them accountable legally and politically. That's why, for example, big tech do not mess with the EU elections, although there has been like a lot of reports here and there, but there's, at the end of the day, millions of fines that has been like fined for text. And we've seen like things for child safety, we've seen things for different other causes in European courts. So this is where they are held accountable. But if you look at global majority, there are so many cases where in India, for example, during the elections in 2024, there was like a huge campaign against Muslim minority there, and there was nothing about it. It spread, it flourished, this kind of information, misinformation, news spread and flourished. Same for Palestinians when you look at the Israeli narrative. It's same if you look also at Ethiopia, at Kenya, at South Africa, and other places. It happened also in other places and other elections. However, if you look at Brazil, because now Brazil is leading the regulatory framework when it comes to global majority countries, that see change because Brazil now is also a leading power when it comes to regulating the big techs. And that could lead me to two main categories. The first one is how those big tech companies are held accountable and in which ecosystems. And the other one, what do we want? Do we want just to rely on the big tech, or do we want to shape our big tech, our digital infrastructure, and to build our ecosystem so we start using that? And speaking about that, this doesn't mean that we like only to use this and to leave that, because I do agree with what Mo said regarding we want to stay here so our narrative stayed here, but also we want to stay here so we tell people, hey, there is an alternative that you could join and you're not censored and you can speak with us there. We can have those conversations there. We don't want to be in an echo chamber where we are other, because if you look at those alternatives that now are emerging, and I'm glad that Palestine is incubating those projects, interestingly forming a new infrastructure, digital infrastructure, that we can say that we are building or we are having our digital self-determination. I want to speak about digital sovereignty in our region, especially sovereignty is always connected with the states, and unfortunately, states sovereignty, I'm not sure how is that, like if we want to go to that corner or discussion. So I do want actually us, think about holding big tech accountable from one hand, but from the other hand, focusing on the bright side of building the alternative, using the alternative, bringing other people from the big tech platforms to the alternatives, and thinking about what kind of narrative we want to put in there. If that makes sense.
I've got Mo next, and then Taysir, you're after Mo.
Yeah, I mean, it's very well put, Mona. Ultimately, like Muhammad Habibi, I respectfully disagree again when you mentioned, and don't take this as infighting, because this is just honestly respectful disagreement, because this is something that's it's an issue that is being talked about, and it needs to be addressed. Having the alternative is incredibly important. Yes, it starts off as an echo chamber because, like, you know, the people that, as I say, stand on business are very human, pro-humanity oriented, ended up flooding to the to Upscrolled as the primary foundational user base. But the reality is, I mean, we want this to become bigger, and it is already starting to become bigger. And then we noticed that it is something that people want. Clearly, when Larry Ellison purchased TikTok, for example, there was a massive exodus in a way that had a huge push of users that went into Upscrolled, because there's a need. There are people that are very angry and currently still are angry, myself included, at how much silencing and removals are happening across all these Zionist-run platforms. And the important thing here is that I specifically mentioned this, is I do not want anybody to leave these platforms for a very specific reason, which is to continuously flip the narrative on, or flip the script on these Zionists that continuously push lies and propaganda. Like, one thing you need to understand that Zionists are really good at, they are very good at unifying and rallying behind specific lies and propaganda, right? So the one thing in particular, for example, they go on podiums and say, and even had polls in Israel that's asked, how do they win back their narrative? This was a specific Israeli poll, and the answer, the number one answer, was to exacerbate Islamophobia or anti-Islam rhetoric, which is what we're seeing currently. It's all up in our faces now, with the Jake Langs marching into Dearborn, with the disgusting rhetoric that they're spewing. And that's all over social media as we see it right now, currently. They're trying to tie Islam with socialism and communism as if they're all taboo, negative words. And it's just that is their tactic. It is our mission to unify against that Hasbara and flip the table on them, because now everything they say, the Zionists say, can be used against them, and they dig their own graves as they say it. So we should be combating it unified, as a unified movement, so that their entire lie and propaganda gets dispelled within a matter of a day or so. So that's the goal here, is to utilize those platforms that already exist, but then also have an alternative to build and have a true, free speech platform that values people that stand on business and stand for humanity, and doesn't shadow ban people that fight for their own people. So that's the goal here. Is like, you shouldn't say we do not need a platform like that. We absolutely do, because then we continue exacerbating the pattern that we're living in currently.
Very well said. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, everybody who's watching, thank you so much. The chat's been awesome. We are going to have a little bit of a Q&A at the end of the hour. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to toss them into the chat. We are going to go to Taser next, and then we're probably going to need to do closing thoughts from everybody. And I do want to respect everybody's time. So you committed to an hour, but so if you need to leave like right at the end of the hour, then please feel free to do that. We're not gonna hold you here. So that said, Taser, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. Just to say that I completely agree with what Mona and Mo said. I do think that we need to build the alternative like Upscrolled and other platforms, but also other technologies maybe in the near future. And at the same moment, we still need to fight and hold those big tech companies accountable. And we need to bring the knowledge to us. We need to use the law. We need to use litigation actions. We need to be close to tech workers that are so important to the pro-Palestinian movement, because they do bring the expertise that, as for example, myself, I do not have. And those people are fundamentally key to our movement and to our resistance, basically. So at the European level, obviously it's not the international one, but at the EU level, we do have new regulations, for example, that are supposed to hold those companies accountable. I'm not saying they're perfect, but we still need to be in this space. We still need to use those regulations to start, as I said, litigation, but also regulatory pathways against those companies. And we do succeed sometimes. So how can we, at the same moment, build knowledge and expertise in our own movement, and also create our new alternatives? As Mona mentioned, I think that sovereignty is key, not only at the SWANA level, but also individually, sovereignty over our own data. And we need to build the knowledge of the users as well, because users do have rights. Not everywhere, I would say, but when it comes, I mean, within my expertise, when it comes to the EU, users do have rights, and they're simply not aware of their rights because platforms tend to hide those rights. So how can we, as nonprofit organizations, as experts, how can we raise awareness and share those rights so people also know what to do when their content is being taken down, what to do when they have been shadow banned, etc. So I think, yeah, we need to work together at the same moment to still be in those spaces, to fight those spaces and create our own alternatives. But obviously, if we stay on Instagram and those platforms, I do think that it's David against Goliath. I think that we are smart enough and we do have the expertise to create our own technologies, our own platforms. Upscrolled is a great example, and we should continue not only on the content moderation and platforms aspect, but we can also have this conversation on other topics about AI as well. Do we agree to have data centers in Palestine that are owned by Israeli companies, for example? Those topics should be also our topics. And I do think that, yeah, we have the expertise and we should just grow our knowledge around those topics.
So I think that we're going to just have everybody have a chance to kind of close out whatever thoughts they have. I'm going to go in reverse order from what we did before. So counterclockwise. So this time it's Mohammed Nabil. If you have any closing thoughts, please go ahead and share them.
Thank you. This was very revealing, let me say, discussion. We are all share the same goal. Our approaches are different. I totally agree with Mrs. Taysir's approach for the legal. Remember, those big techs, they buy the politicians, so they will not pass laws. Things can change after what's happening in the world, and I hope it's going to change to the best. And because I believe they should be held responsible for the contents of their platforms. I just want to highlight something we do in ISNAD, like Rabbit and return platforms. Those are, especially Rabbit is designed to combat the shadow ban. Shadow ban is one of the common, very common, easy banning techniques, and Rabbit is effectively combating this. Rabbit is simply your fans are following you up on Rabbit, not on Twitter and Facebook. So when they shadow ban you, they usually your followers will not be notified that you posted something, and all of a sudden the views drop from 100,000 to 2,000, and Rabbit will tell your followers that you posted something, and they will go to your post and start reacting with it. So this is, we don't depend on the existing platforms notifications, and we depend on our own notifications, so users will bypass the shadow ban, let me put it this way. We have also other systems that help in fighting those algorithms effectively, as I mentioned. But again, I'm very pleased to meet with you all, and it was really a very nice and revealing discussion, and I hope the success and free Palestine. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. Mohamza, you're next.
All right. So I like to use every platform I have and to highlight this in particular, because it's more of like for us as a collective people, because of what they're trying to do to us and silencing us. It's basically additive to all the atrocities that we've been witnessing, every single day. It's just adds another layer of like, dystopia to the world we live in, right? So this is something that I'd like to highlight, is that, every empire in history, uses the psychic numbing tactic. And this is something for all users that are every single platform, that you're going to see so much atrocity, propaganda, and so much atrocity thrown at you at once, which is Israel's MO. They throw everything at you at once, all of the atrocities they can. Donald Trump spews lies every single millisecond so that you don't catch on to the lies and everything. This is very important for me to like continuously highlight, because sometimes I'm noticing it's not just the algorithmic thing, because when a term like ceasefire comes up, in our world, it tends to, silence people a little bit more. People become a little bit more complacent and don't, post as much, are not as active on social media. And this is something that actually contributes to the algorithm. It helps the algorithm when we become a little bit more silenced, that they're just amplifying other news stories, other stories that are just useless in our world. It's important to continue to push our voices harder than ever when they're trying to manipulate our voices at all times. So psychic numbing is basically being aware of that, being aware that they are trying to numb you to a point of inaction, to a point of silencing you without actually silencing you on the digital platforms that be. They're actually trying to have you, take a seat back and say, oh, everything's honky-dory, everything is really good now that there's a ceasefire. But no, we know, we see, and with our very own eyes, it's still continuing every single day. We're seeing the genocide literally continued and exacerbated by Western news media, which is trying to dominate our social media waves again. So it is important that we continue to be loud and push on a mass scale as a huge group with the same exact content that we've been doing for the past 3+ years. Because now, once we start to silence ourselves, their algorithms will crush us. That's just how it is. So I want us to just be wary that if we feel like that numbness, feel broken down, feel tired of posting and yelling into whatever void you think you're yelling into, just know that means they're winning. They want you to do that, and that is, in a sense, them winning this digital war. So I refuse to do that personally, which is why I continuously come onto the platforms that try to silence me. And I think everybody should do the same, is really just keep pushing your content as much as humanly possible, no matter what shadow banning they're trying to do to you. Because the more people that do that, the more we end up, crushing their algorithms and, silencing of us. So that's that.
Thank you. Aziz, yalla habibi.
I think that we don't own the platforms, we don't own the algorithms, we don't own the terms. We fight in their battle. The Zionist regime who controlled or ruled the world, they created a shield for their story. The shield is the algorithm. So I think our effectiveness does not come from answering every lie, every single lie, or joining every single battle, or replacing every single platform. I think that this way will burns our energy, or burns our supporters' energy in a narrative battle that was designed with our enemies' terms. So that we in ISNAD believe that the real effectiveness, our real effectiveness, comes from working in 3 levels. The first one, understanding against the algorithm itself, by understanding them, outsmarting them, and breaking them. The second level, or second battle, maybe, dismantling the main foundations of their fake story, of Zionist fake stories. Instead of chasing every daily claim, or we focused intensely on building tools, lines, and strategies. We think that we can design maybe a solution for every for small problems, small issues, not spend our abilities on designing a huge platforms to replace the whole infrastructure. I think we need to think in this way. We need to make or design some solutions for the small issues to dismantling the battle against the algorithm, against the system. We try to do that in SNAD. We actually designing very many small applications, many small solutions to dismantling this battle, this huge battle. So we think we don't need to defeat the algorithm. Maybe we can crack it, or dismantling it, and winning small battles. But we should have a clear goal. Our enemy is a narrative for Zionist state. At the 3 levels, the internal speech, internal narrative for the Israelis. We already have some solutions, some platforms to speak with the Zionists inside, the settlements inside. And we have some platforms or some solutions, some teams to fight against the global narrative, the Zionist global narrative, and the Arab Palestinian Zionist narrative, which for the Arabs and the Palestinians. So that I don't think we need to fight a huge war, a huge fight against the whole algorithm, the whole system, and replace every single platform. I think we should think to fight small battles to just it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mona. Go ahead.
Thank you, Paul. I do want to start just like a little bit like say even ourselves more. We should think what we want at this stage, because we can keep saying that, yeah, the narratives for the Israeli narrative divided, la la la. We can speak about that, but in the end of the day, we need to ask ourselves, what do we want? How we want to live there, and if we believe in ourselves, then our technologies and the infrastructure that we're putting together, if you have something put there to join like shoulder by shoulder and hand by hand to try to sustain this ecosystem, so this ecosystem grows and you bring from the outer side so they can start also using this. Alternatively, it's a matter of time, because as we can see, like in the past few years, there has been a lot of emerging tech happening here and there, and but also there's been a lot of pushback on the big techs, the data centers, their implications not only on humans and like in places like Palestine and how they are complicit in apartheid and genocide, but also on environmental perspective and other aspects that fundamentally contradicts our values and our principles. Therefore, I think the shared values and shared principles must bring us closer together, makes us join the efforts for the worthy technology. And that now are emerging, like look at Upscroll, look at Thawra AI, look at other tech platforms that are emerging, and try not only to use them as a consumer, but also try to think how those could evolve, how those could thrive. If you can support them, how could you support them? If you can invest, maybe think about investing in these technologies and try to enrich them ecosystem and try to think about this. And that said about the infrastructure, we also know about the policies in parallel or in parallel with that, and to think about what kind of policies do we have platforms, because in the end of the day, if we want to build a technology that is owned and incubated by the community and by the movement, then the movement need to shape the technologies not only as product but also as product. So if you have something regarding the policies, if you have something on how those technologies should be shaped, what should stay online and what shouldn't stay online, and what's your rationale behind that? Maybe this is like an invitation more to have more exchange, more knowledge exchange, and more experience there with those companies, and try to join that table. Whenever there's a round table like this and you have something in that regard, try to enrich that kind of conversation. So we develop those technologies based on our needs, not only as like being the other big tech, because our needs as a community and as a movement is slightly different from the global trend. So I think I do want us primarily to believe in us and to believe in our abilities to build those technologies and to sustain those technologies, not only to build them. I will stop here. Before I stop, I want to thank Tech for Palestine once again for organizing this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Taser, go ahead.
I'll be also very quick. Just thank you so much for this conversation, because I think that respectful disagreements are good. It's good to debate also together, to be able to go out from our comfort zone as well and learn other perspectives. I think that we do have the tools to build strong platforms and technologies where we can be the sovereign behind them, but we still need and I'm still saying the same thing, but we still need to build a bit more the expertise. Also create some cross sector work. I think it's important for nonprofit and academics, for example, to be very close and working with tech workers. We also need to build strong guidelines for whistleblowers, so we can also get information from those big tech companies. And that's always a way to understand how their tools work, how their algorithms and technologies are being designed. So I do think that we need a bit more cooperation, collaboration all together. But at the same moment, the solutions, I would say, are here. We have great expertise and knowledge already. We are capable of so many things, and I think that Upscrolled is a very good example of it. But we also need to, I mean, as Hamlet does, we still need to continue to report, to archive all the censorship that is happening on these big tech platforms, because hopefully at some point accountability will be done, and we will be also able to repair and ask for reparation from what has been done. So yeah, I would say continuing what we do in those platforms and building our new own solutions is key for the near future. And thank you so much for this conversation. I learned a lot as a non like technology expert, but more like a policy advocacy one. And I really hope to be able to listen to all of you very soon. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you all so much for being here. I think Mo had a quick final
Very,
thought.
very quick. Yeah.
We're gonna
And
after that we'll do 15 minutes of questions for everyone we can get to, and then we'll close it down. Go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on one thing I didn't touch on before. Is I know we're talking about echo chambers and the manipulation of the algorithm so that we feel like we're screaming into the void on when we say upscrolled platforms like Upscrolled. But the reality is the larger legacy media, big tech platforms have now evolved to a point where they have put us into echo chambers on their respective platforms. FYI, we like people that know social media enough to know that's why you're seeing the same exact people liking your posts. Your virality is not as high as it used to be because they have evolved their manipulation of the algorithm to now all pro-Palestine, for example, voices are yelling at other pro-Palestine people. And that is what you're seeing within the metas, for example. Like that is very clear as day now that a lot of us users have been noticing. Like, oh yeah, my likes have been going up a little bit more, but actually, wait, I'm noticing they're all the exact same people every single time. So they have created an echo chamber within those platforms that we're basically saying you should stay on. And the one thing I want to highlight is that, in particular, is the BDS movement. We should always think BDS movement and boycott, because the reality is these Zionist platforms are Zionist platforms, and they in reality should be boycotted, right? But we are not doing it because we know that that is the main source as to where we need to push our narrative, and we know that this is something we're using against themselves, right? But at the same time, with the BDS mentality and boycott mentality in mind, you always need to be supporting those platforms that are truly, valuing free speech and no censorship. So that I just wanted to throw that out there, because they are manipulating our, that void on the bigger platforms as well.
Very much so, and thank you for that. I believe, so we're going to get over to a Q&A. I think, Taysir, you said you have to leave. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you and everything that you were able to contribute. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. And of course, if anybody else needs to hop off, don't feel bad. We're happy to have you here for the Q&A section. The first question that I have here, I believe Luke's was already addressed. I'm just scrolling up. The next one I have is from Jessica. The question is, would it be possible for us to have a comprehensive strategy to counter Hasbara? We don't have the structure, but we do have the people. We can have a significant impact if we are able to mobilize towards a common goal, which is something we kind of already touched on a little bit, but didn't get into the weeds of how to do that. So if anybody has any thoughts on that, go ahead and just hop in.
Can I jump in? Just a quick note on this. Yeah, I think, yes, I think because there is a lack of the formal efforts to have a counter narrative, there are so many organizations that are really progressive and pushing progressive narrative on Palestine and on the intersectional struggle. I do want to mention a couple of them here, but those are not the only organizations, of course. I do want to start with IMEU, for example, in the States. They always put some concrete narrative use. I do want to mention for public diplomacy, or you can find them also as Rabbit. They also always put comprehensive narrative. We can use that for advocacy and for a lot of stuff. There are other pages online that they a lot of content about Palestine, such as Let's Talk Palestine and other organizations. There is also in Europe European Legal Support Center. There is also like this awareness around like the suppression in Europe. So there are a lot of organizations that are putting different formulations for narrative Palestine, not only inside Palestine, but also for the diaspora and for the pro-Palestine movement, for the wider. I think that could be used as a source to enrich our narrative and what we want and where we want to go. And of course, I do want to highlight the Shabaka, the Palestinian called the Shabaka. They always work on the narrative. So there are so many organizations that are really doing good job on that front. So I would highly recommend that people would look at that and would amplify those voices, but also get from the kind of develop this kind of narrative and amplify it.
Mr. Paul, I would like to add something to what Mona mentioned. So in ISNAD, we do this on a daily basis, literally. So the way that we unify the narrative is, number one, we have to educate our team, all of them, thousands of them, on what's happening on geopolitical stage, why this is happening, what do we expect from this, because we don't just push just the narrative. It is very common that we engage in a discussion on the platform, and you have to have the information on how to engage with other people. The narrative itself, it depends on what's happening right now. So for example, in today, which is August 20th, 26th, this is everybody is talking about the Strait of Hormuz, the American-Iran war, the depletion of weapons, and the problem of the Israeli elections, and so this is where we should be going. And in ISNAD, we have a team that will organize the narrative according to the current events. And tomorrow, maybe something else is going to happen, and we need to focus and cover this as well. And as I mentioned, it's a team effort. It's not just one-man show. It's a lot of people working on this. And the most important part is to work on our human resources, make sure that everybody understands really what's going on, because we cannot depend on the traditional media to give the truth about what's happening around the world. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to move on to, we have time to maybe one or two more questions. This next one is from C. Martin, specifically asking for resources of terms of policies regarding censorship. So it's worded, where are we at in terms of policies regarding the censorship? The last public effort was Elizabeth Warren's letter to Zuck. What are the latest algorithmic limitations and wording strategies? Any resources that we can refer to, I think specifically regarding tactics and ways to counteract censorship at various levels?
Yeah, I mean, I can just speak as a user that I've been doing personally. It's honestly, it's what we all know. It's trigger words that are negative. Honestly, anything that's like politically charged, that we typically symbolize it. All of that kind of stuff. The tactics I use is also try to refrain from using as many words use as least words as possible in the caption sometimes, and put whatever, if you have like a full thought that you want to actually include for people to see, put it in the actual post itself rather than the caption. And then obviously like censoring certain words within like a video is important in terms of like pushing things like that. That's the thing. Like that's why I think pushing for those alternatives that don't require all this stupid hoop jumping is the best way to go about it. But we have to manipulate the system. They're catching on very quickly on certain things. They've implemented AI across their platforms to catch things even at the symbol level. Like if they see a word that looks like that word, they're starting to catch on to that kind of stuff. So it's a tough game to play, but yeah, I mean, it's finding the creative ways to do it is the best way.
I just want to interject real quick too. There's a user who I always point to about what it actually looks like to engage in like FYP or algorithm. She goes by Abby John Daughter, and she will literally start her TikToks telling people what to comment, what to say. She'll research trends and be like, comment as if this TikTok was about blank trend or whatever, and it works surprisingly well sometimes. How well it gets around that. Mona, I think you wanted to go next.
Yeah, I wanted to, because regarding the Elizabeth Warren thing, it's just like, it's funny because I was involved in those advocacy efforts, particularly with this case. But it's been a while when I've seen the comment. This was 2 years ago or even more. But it's funny enough because also I do want to put something on the table that we didn't actually mention during this the whole change in the tech scene within the big tech industry in January last year, which feels like 2 years ago. Like it's now 2 years ago, but it feels like a while ago. Or yes, like it was weird because we as a movement were pushing for a lot of change, not only for Palestine, again for many other policies that impact Palestinians, but also other people. However, when in January 2025, Trump administration to power, there was a lot of changes that happened in that scene. We've seen how so many, like how the different tech companies, I'm gonna name, like for example, Meta, they immediately eliminated their fact-checking program, and like we want to have free speech, more free speech. Like what defines free? Excuse me, for like a company that suppresses certain. And then they also changed certain policies. One of those policies that has been changed and it has a big impact on the community is the hate speech policy, where technically people are now allowed more to crack down on women and the queers online. And if you compare that with before, and even before, it wasn't like a perfect example. Like the best safeguards ever to protect the queers and women online, but now it's even weaker policy, so people can crack down under the so-called free speech. So when you look at the space and how that was changing, and also you think about all the other changes that happened within the tech industry, including the TikTok states, you can understand that the efforts not only stopped, some of the efforts unfortunately have like were like there was like a undone click that happened. Some of the policies that actually were changed overnight, they have, or they went back to few years before, and that was kind of disappointing, but also was a waking call for us to think about what do we want and how we can have our own thing and our new infrastructure. So this is something also to keep in mind and to think about it. Not only, yeah, it's a global platform, so everyone is there and we can speak with everyone, because overnight there was like a political change that impacted all those tech companies and technically impacted people in the global majority. So yeah, that happened. That came in that comment.
I think my producers will yell at me if I try to take another question. So we're probably going to end it here. But I think that that's an excellent point to land on, which is essentially uh, all these changes affect everybody. It's not just one movement or this or that or the other. It's when you try to cramp down on free speech, when you increase censorship, it reduces the safety of everybody involved, and that's why big creators like Mo and Alan Espinosa just submitted a comment, but it was about Miss Rachel and how the larger the platform, the bigger the following, the harder it is to silence those voices. Like how vehemently they have tried to silence Mo's voice, and he just, no matter what they do, he just always bounces back and says, "Hey guys, follow for more." I appreciate you all so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This was an amazing conversation, and I believe we had a couple of questions about whether. So one was from Imam Bukhari, whether you could cite this. Yes, this will be uploaded after we end the session here, and you can cite it how you would any other YouTube video. So again, thank you all so much for joining us. This was the Tech for Palestine Roundtable, Winning the Algorithm Wars. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.